billion people a day listen or watch podcasts on YouTube. We should rank and rate them. And we placed 3 in the top 100 in the first weekly ranking. You, Midas Touch, at number 5. Legal AF at number 64, and a little thing called the Popok intersection, which is basically my hot takes on Legal AF, the YouTube channel, at number 90, beating out, Smartlist is not there. Who's Your Daddy is not there. But we have 3 for the Midas Touch Network there. And that's a compliment to our audience. As we've always joked, or only half joked, it would just be like me and Ben once a week having a chat over a bagel, a virtual bagel about politics, if it wasn't for our dedicated and loyal audience that vibrates on the same frequency that we do, and that has joined together with us in this fellowship of resistance. We are a channel of action, and that's what I hope people take away from a show like ours today. They get the information they need in talking truth to each other in order to go into the streets and put it into action.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling. Let's just get into it right away, Michael Popok. So this Supreme Court ruling was a 7-2 decision. The Trump regime lost. This case involves the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, although the Supreme Court ruling did not get to the merits, right, of whether the Alien Enemies Act was properly invoked or improperly invoked. The Supreme Court said, we'll save that for a later time. For now, what they were addressing is whether or not an injunction that's already been in place that the Supreme Court had to issue on an emergency basis, preventing the next group of victims who are at this Blue Bonnet detention center in Texas, and they're said to be shipped off to the concentration camp in El Salvador, whether they can be shipped off or not shipped off, and what process is going to be due to these individuals. And just to remind everybody, there was that first group of migrant victims, 75-80% without a criminal history, who were sent to the concentration camp in El Salvador when the Trump regime defied an order by Judge Boasberg in Washington, D.C., blocking that from happening. The Trump regime said, oopsies, too late, nothing we can do about it. And then when the Supreme Court said, can you return? What are you doing here? Or at least as it relates to Abrego Garcia, can you facilitate, his return? The response by the Trump regime is, nope, not in our jurisdiction. We can't do anything about it. Go ask Nayib Bukele, the authoritarian leader of El Salvador. So that happened with the first group of migrants. This is a second group of migrants. The Trump regime wanted to do it again. The lawyers for the migrants who are being temporarily housed in this horrible detention center where there's like very little access to the outside world. You may have seen that drone footage of a Reuters drone over this Blue Bonnet detention center in Texas. Like the migrants formed an SOS with their bodies, like a distress signal to this drone. But anyway, they had lawyers who basically said, hey, they're about to get sent to this concentration camp as well in El Salvador. So they filed before a judge in Texas, and the federal judge in Texas basically took, and the Supreme Court goes through the history. It was like, it was over 24 hours, doing nothing. And then because the judge didn't do anything at all, then the lawyers were like, you're basically denying our ability to help our clients. They went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which oversees the Texas federal courts, and said, hey, the federal court hasn't ruled. The Fifth Circuit, which is made up of right-wing justices, almost exclusively right-wing justices and Trump appointees, said nothing that we can do. We don't have jurisdiction because the district court has not made its ruling yet, so you can't appeal it unless the district court rules. So procedurally, there's nothing we can do. And then the lawyers for these migrants went to the Supreme Court, asked for an emergency stay or emergency injunction to block these migrants from being sent to El Salvador. That was a few weeks back, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, let's pause the status quo. We're ordering the Trump regime not to send these migrants to El Salvador pending further proceedings. Send us briefing. Let us know what's going on. A few weeks passed. Popok, let me turn it over to you now, because now the Supreme Court, a few weeks after ordering that these migrants not be sent to El Salvador, they then They then finally made their ruling 7-2. Tell us about the ruling.
Yeah, and so let me do the quick takeaways since you did a good kind of initial dive in there. No one until the United States Supreme Court gets around after the Fifth Circuit does their job, which they failed to do the first time around and were admonished by the Supreme Court in this ruling, until the Fifth Circuit is done with its appellate briefing, until the case comes back up to the United States Supreme Court through the normal ordinary channel and probably hits the court sometime in the new term starting in October. No one gets deported outside of the United States and the federal court's jurisdiction, any federal court's jurisdiction, until the United States Supreme Court says so. So even though they did not rule on the substance of the Alien Enemies Act and bent over backwards to tell everybody we're not ruling on the substance, and that is true, but from now until the next 5 or 6 months, whatever it is, you and I are not going to have to make a report, at least under the Alien Enemies Act, that a person has been removed, deported, expelled, whatever you want to call it, to a foreign prison outside of the federal jurisdiction of a judge. We may do reporting, and I've just done hot takes, and so have you, about the use of other policies, whether it be immigration law or under other tools in Donald Trump's tool bags to deport people. They just did another illegal deportation under their third party deportation plan, which is we want to get rid of the person, but his home country won't take him. What do? We'll send him to a third country that will take him. There's some problems with due process related to that as well. But we will, at least for now, based on this ruling, will not have to talk about Alien Enemy Act, illegal deportation in violation of due process to a foreign country. However, that was a bad segue. This is exactly identical to the 7-2 decision and lineup that you and I talked about 4 weeks ago with that 1 a.m. decision. This is the same case. This is a case we call AARP, not that one, brought by the ACLU in Texas. And to remind everybody how we got here, that ruling a month ago was sort of a temporary ruling. Ground the planes, wheels down. Don't send anybody until we make a decision about process. My takeaway from this, and we'll read from some pages of it, of the decision, Ben, is that the Supreme Court felt put upon, at least 7 of them, felt like they were being dragged into something and being dragged down from on high to do something that they didn't really want to do because the district court judge in Texas and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans fell down on the job. And basically, how dare you? They've said the Fifth Circuit should have entered the injunction instead of making us do it at 1 o'clock in the morning and wasting our capital. You see it throughout the pages of the complaint. It's an admonishment of the Fifth Circuit. They're chastising the district court judge who said, well, I don't know why I do accents every time. I sort of believe the Trump administration when they tell me they're not going to be sending people to Venezuela or to El Salvador while I'm trying to make a decision. And the ACLU's like, I'm sorry? That's your order? Forget you. We're going to the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit, you've got the planes are being fueled. The seats are in the upright and locked position. Our people are being sent away from your jurisdiction. Do something. Well, we don't think we have jurisdiction. You didn't give the trial court judge enough time. Chicken and egg and chicken. Screw you. We're going to the Supreme Court. And they finally get the Supreme Court 4 weeks ago to issue that order. Now, here's what the concurrence and the split was. Alito and Thomas far to the right. They're always huffing and puffing and clutching their pearls over jurisdiction. Oh my, we don't care about human beings being sent to gulags. We just care about procedure and jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction to do anything. They don't. Let me just translate that. Alito and Thomas in the far right don't care if people are sent in the interim away from federal jurisdiction into dark gulags. They don't care about those people. They're not human beings to them. Whereas the 7 of the majority, including Roberts and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, said, wait a minute. We don't want to be stampeded by the Trump administration anymore. We don't want to be forced to make a fast decision. We're going to go back on our timetable. Stop deporting. We will get around to deciding whether you have the right under the Alien Enemies Act to do what you're doing. In the meantime, you are not to do it any longer. And when we're done, and if we grant the appeal, which they're going to grant the appeal on the writ, we'll get back to you and let you know if you have the powers under the Alien Enemies Act that you claim. Now, Kavanaugh Some people interpreted Kavanaugh as, oh, he wants to help